Oh God. Geez, I'll talk to you about how these books came about, except for all the bad stuff, which just my closest friends. Oh wait, you all are my closest friends. It's all about. Anyway, I'll start with Secrets of the Octopus. And some of you may know that I wrote a book called The Soul of an Octopus, which was a surprise, as in shocking, national bestseller. No one expected a book about a marine invertebrate to be a bestseller. No one expected it to be a finalist for a major literary award. No one expected it to do anything, but it did. And living those 3 years visiting and getting to know the individual octopuses that I did really changed my thinking about thinking, changed my thinking about consciousness, and I think it kind of moved the needle for octopuses. While I was researching Soul of an Octopus, if anybody saw like a mug on it that had an octopus, or earrings of an octopus, they were on it. I mean, this was amazing. Everyone immediately got it. But now, there's actually a section in the very beginning, octopuses are so having a moment. Right now, if you want, and some of us do, you can outfit your entire home in octopuses. Ceph lovers can now surround themselves with suckers. There are not only octopus mugs and octopus t-shirts, but octopus hats and scarves and earrings and necklaces and socks, rings for fingers, noses and toes, tentacles for everything from hands to heels. Online you can scroll through pages of octopus designs for your computer accessories, mouse pads to your cell phone. You can tote them around in your octopus backpack. You can outfit your bathroom in a cephalopod theme, with octopus shower curtains and towels and bath mats and soap and toilet paper holders. You can fill your whole house with octopus furnishings, octopus pillows, bedspreads, mirrors, coat racks, tables, lamps, chairs, bookends, chandeliers, candelabras, plates, bowls, tablecloths, napkins, napkin holders, cutlery, and stemware. I know because many are in our house. But not only is it a great time for octopus merch, but since 2015, there's been a ton of new science coming out on octopus. And many of the studies that have been launched are answering some of the questions that I had while I was researching The Soul of an Octopus, which I began in 2011. And there have been a ton of great other octopus books as well. There's been octopus films. How many saw My Octopus Teacher? I mean, that was so moving. Well, that was in production while I was working on my book. It came out, I think, the year after. But I happen to know that Netflix was preparing for it to be a huge disaster. I was just at the National Television Critics Association meeting in LA, which had an hour of hair and makeup for me every morning. It was horrendous. They were spraying stuff, there was powder, I was coughing my lungs out. It was a really weird situation. But anyway, there I talked to folks that knew the inside scoop about this, and everyone thought My Octopus Teacher was going to be a huge failure. And as you know, if you won whatever those award things are that you get for those kinds of things. And there's now going to be a series of 3 Secrets of the Octopus. In fact, I went to the octopus blind date at Seattle Aquarium, which they had for many years. And what they would do is that they would release a male and female octopus into the same tank. And the time I went, it was really sexy. I mean, there's 6 hearts beating as one, there's 16 arms everywhere, and a lot of suckers and a lot of lube. So it was quite romantic. However, it was not unknown to have the male eat the female or the female eat the male, either before or after the public part. So now they just release them in the ocean. They don't let them both be together. And this was not an artifact of captivity. Roger Hanlon observed a male and female octopus mating, and he mated with her 12 times successfully, but 13 was unlucky, and she ate him. But, by then he'd already handed his sperm packet to her, and so his genes will continue. Anyway, octopuses being solitary? Not so. It had always surprised me. Why would a solitary animal want to spend time with me? I had friends who were octopuses who would literally light up when they saw me. They would be resting in their lair. I would open the tank, and Octavia was like this, Kali was like this, Karma was like this, Theta was like this. They'd look at me, I'd see their eyes swivel in their socket, lock onto my face, and then they would come flowing out of their lair and looking like a beautiful silk scarf in the water, and then reach up through the water with their soft, questing suckers. And when I would plunge my hands and arms in there, I'd be covered with these suckers, and I would have to explain to Howard why I was coming home from Boston covered with hickeys. But why would they be so happy to see me? They knew they couldn't eat me. I was too big. And they never made any effort to eat me. I also was pretty careful about not getting my hands near their beak, which, as you know, is in their armpits. But if they were so solitary, what kind of pre-adapted them to be interested in other species that weren't prey? Well, it turns out that even the giant Pacific octopus can live in a social situation of sometimes, 10 animals in a very closely packed octocondo. And other species do this too. There's an octopus called the gloomy octopus. He lives in Australia. He's not really gloomy, he just has big expressive eyes. But most of the places in Australia where you find this species, he's living alone. But there's 2 places they've discovered in which there are octopus cities. One is such a metropolis they call it Octopolis. The other they call Octatlantis. And in these cities, there always seems to be one octopus who David Scheel, my friend who's a researcher and has done a lot of work there, calls it the quidnook, which is an old word for what now. It's Latin for what's happening now. It's like kind of the octopus mayor or the octopus busybody, and this is always a large adult male. And since they don't live very long, it's not the same male year after year after year, but someone assumes that position, and it's really like the mayor of the town. Whenever anybody is coming back to these series of very closely spaced dens, he rises up and looks around, and if someone's having a tussle, he might go and interfere. But just like in cities, some people get along, some people don't. One of the things David has filmed, which is a riot, is sometimes neighbors get annoyed with each other, and when they do, they'll chuck a bunch of shells. It's hilarious to see this. You should go online. And there are other octopus species that seem to have favored mates who they hang out with. And some will even mate beak to beak, which, when you consider that every octopus is venomous, that's very vulnerable position to be in. But not only do octopuses hang out with other octopuses, now some of the science is finding that octopuses form alliances with other species of animals, including fish. And there's this one kind of sea trout, marine trout, who will go up to an octopus, do a headstand, which is a signal to the octopus, I've got an idea, let's go hunting, I know where we should go. The octopus will follow the fish, then the octopus does the headstand again in front of the usually piece of coral or rock into which the bony fish cannot fit. But the octopus, who's nearly liquid, can just flow in there, and out come all these delicious invertebrates that everyone can eat. So they will cooperatively hunt with other species, just like a person might hunt with a hunting dog, or a falconer might hunt with a hawk, or rat-tails or honey badgers in Africa hunt with honey guides. So that is pretty cool. And it's another way in which we appreciate their intelligence. The book like the film, is divided into 3 parts. One is on camouflage. A lot of new stuff has been found about camouflage. The second part is called Gelatinous Geniuses, because it's about their intelligence. And the third part is called Octopus Kingdom. Octopuses use tools. And one of the things, if you tune in and see the TV series, there's a segment where an octopus is being beset by an annoying shrimp. And you'd think like, a shrimp, come on. But there are species of shrimp that have like pointy deals on their bodies and they can poke you. So the octopus is getting annoyed by this, doesn't want to leave. He looks around and he sees a shell and he picks it up and he holds it up like a shield. That's tool use. And it's also a riot because, as you know, octopuses are mollusks. And most mollusks have a shell. But in the course of evolution, they shed their shell, which allows them the mobility to hunt, but also makes them vulnerable to be hunted. But I think it's a riot, and this octopus is like, oh, I don't have a shell, but I can borrow this one. They also will find, you may know about this was known, there's a species called the coconut octopus, and he finds 2 coconut halves, holds them under his interbrachial web with 2 arms. With 2 other arms, he walks like a person walking on legs. He looks like a weary commuter leaving Logan with too much luggage. And he'll lug this a long way, and then he'll put the 2 halves together and use his suckers to pull it together, and he's got himself his own Quonset hut. Very, very cool stuff. So I had a blast researching this, with one exception, which some of you know of. There was one researcher who just wouldn't talk to me. And he wouldn't talk to me for soul of an octopus either. And Eleanor has heard me whine about this endlessly. I was so upset. His name is Roger Hanlon, and he's the guy who has done so much stuff on octopus camouflage. And this is a fascinating part of their lives. They consciously make their colors, they make their patterns, and they can change the texture of their skin. And they can do this not just to blend into the background, but they can also try to resemble, which they do with great success in some species, another animal. So, for example, the mimic octopus can mimic something like 15 different species. One of the ones that it does is a poisonous flounder. And it is such a convincing imitation of a flounder that other flounders will swim after it, thinking that he's their buddy. So Roger Hanlon was the one guy that during the short space of time that they gave me to write this, that I could have gotten to actually go to his lab and get a scene. And if you're a writer, you know you kind of want to have a live scene in which you're reporting what's happening. And he works at Woods Hole. And I would have loved to have gone there. But he just wouldn't, he was just ghosting me. And one day I found out why. He called my editor and said that he wanted to write the book instead of me. And I, of course, when I learned that, I said, he can write it, that's okay. I've done a few interviews, I enjoyed it, he can totally have it. But they wanted somebody to write a more popular book, so I ended up writing it. Anyway, and I put Roger Hanlon in there. You will read about his fascinating research. But all of the quotes that you'll read are off the internet and off, articles that he's written. He's done TED Talks and stuff like that. So Roger's in there, and you'll read all about it. But now you know the secret behind, the secrets of the secrets of the octopus. Anyway, I wonder if before I go on to brave Baby Hummingbird, since we've got 2 books to cover today, and I know that you probably want to get in your car and leave before it gets any worse out here. Any questions about Secrets of the Octopus? No. Well, if you have any further questions, ask Heidi Bell. If you haven't met her yet, Heidi Bell is my BFF, and we bonded over Octopus when she was 9.
I was just going to ask you, how did you start? Like, what was your first were you interested in Octopus to begin with? Like, where did that come from?
Oh, good question. I had written something like 28 books in 2011 when I decided to do The Soul of an Octopus. And what prompted me to do that was that all of my other books, almost all of them, had been about vertebrate animals with backbones who lived on the earth, not in the sea. Now, I did write books about pink river dolphins, and I had written some books about tarantulas who are invertebrates, but I've never written anything about a marine invertebrate. And most animals on our planet are not backboned animals. They do not live on the land. They are marine invertebrates. And I call myself a naturalist. So I felt like I need to know somebody and write about them. But also I'd had this thing in the back of my tiny head for a long time that I wanted to write about consciousness. There's two big problems in philosophy, big questions, big mysteries. And one of them is consciousness. What is it? Do we even have it? There are philosophers who say that the self, for example, is a concept that we just made up and there is no self. There's many people who say that there is no soul. And I wanted to look into, hey, if I've got a soul, if I've got a self, if I've got consciousness, who else has it? And all my life, my closest friends have been animals. I certainly felt that they had consciousness. But can you find consciousness in someone who is separated from our lineage by 500 million years of evolution? The last time we shared a common ancestor with the octopus was 500 million years ago when everyone was a tube. There were no eyes, there were no heart, there was nothing. I mean, everyone alive was a tube. So if there is consciousness in an animal that different from us, I think that has a lot of ramifications for how we ought to live on this earth. And I feel certain that if I have a soul, the octopuses that I knew have a soul. Well, we'll move on to brave Baby Hummingbird. And gosh, it's such a beautiful book, and I can brag on it because I had nothing to do. I didn't even select this artist. Most of the time, if you're a writer, you get assigned an artist, and so I have to say thank you to Paula Wiseman, who was my editor. The artist Tiffany Bozick has done a number of other books. She's married to an ornithologist, so she was really thrilled to do this book. And I have written another hummingbird book that some of you may know, The Hummingbird's Gift, which actually is like a chapter with new material and new photos of a previous book, Birdology. Well, books begat books begat books. And it was Paula Wiseman, my editor's idea, that I do this picture book for children on hummingbirds, and I decided to write it from the standpoint of one of the 2 orphan baby hummingbirds that I raised years ago with the help of my friend out in California, who is a hummingbird rehabilitator. Now, I, of course, can't know what these birds think, and I didn't want to encourage people to try to raise orphan baby hummingbirds themselves. It's a very hard job. Every 20 minutes you have to feed them. If you feed them too little, they will starve. And if you feed them too much, you feed them with a syringe, they will pop. So don't try this at home, friends. But if you find an orphan baby hummingbird, first, make sure it's orphaned because the mother spends a lot of time away from the nest gathering the fruit flies and other insects and nectar that she's going to feed her babies. And sometimes she just comes back and squirts it in the mouth and disappears. So a lot of people think that there are orphaned baby hummingbirds when they aren't orphaned at all. But this describes these 2 babies who actually were orphaned, being raised by a voice We never see the face of the person. We see their hands briefly. And then when they grow up and bravely begin to fly, and have to fly from Northern California all the way down to Mexico and back, having never made the trip, and then come back to the very yard where they were raised. So that's what this book is about, and it is suitable to be read to young people or to let young people read themselves. It was such a joy taking care of these babies, and I didn't put this in this children's book, but when we were raising these two babies, there was a point at which we were certain that they were goners. One of the babies had a horrible infestation of mites, and you don't even see them at all, and then all of a sudden they're swarming everywhere, and they suck the baby's blood. But to kill the mites, you need to put insecticide on these little infants. And hummingbirds are really just bubbles wrapped in air. They have 9 air sacs, giant lungs, giant heart, but they're really just a bunch of feathers around a bunch of air. And so any pollution in the air is going to fill their bodies and kill them. So we were terrified having to treat these little guys for mites. And after the first treatment, one of them looked like he just wasn't going to make it. And in fact, he wouldn't eat 20 minutes later, and they really need to eat every 20 minutes. So it was like 40 minutes before he ate, and he did make it, and we did, as is described in this book and the other ones. They both survived, we released them both, and we hope that they did indeed go to Mexico. We don't know for sure that they came back to the yard, because of course when they left they were teenagers, and when they came back they were adults, and particularly the males get really resplendent feathers. So there was no way that we could recognize them and make sure it was them. But if they survived, they probably would come right back. And there are plenty of hummingbirds every year in British Garden.
Are they too tiny to band them so that you can follow them?
It's very hard to do. I mean, if you've got like a license to do it, but yeah, it's really hard to do. Their feet are like thread, you know, and putting any kind of extra weight on someone like that too is a problem. And I know that we now have nice lightweight bands for a lot of species, but early on when they were banding birds, it had weird consequences, and you'll know this one. At one point, they discovered that the color band that they were putting on these certain birds that they were studying either made them more or less attractive to mates. So it was like somebody made you wear a really ugly shirt and then go out and try and get a date, and forget it. But then you gave, you know, your friend this like totally attractive, gorgeous thing, and people were all over her like white on rice. So, you know, people were messing the birds up. But yeah, now I know that people are trying to track hummingbirds with little tiny micro deals. But even catching them in a mist net, I mean, their bones, they're hollow, they're tiny, they're just so delicate that no one really should mess with them. And happily, their nests are almost impossible to find. They're so well camouflaged. They're only this big, and the babies, they hatch out of eggs the size of navy beans. The little infants are the size of almonds once they fluff out. They are the tiniest things, and yet they grow into the fastest birds in the sky, and they're able to do maneuvers no other bird can do. And that's one reason that, you know, this book is a nice metaphor for young people. You may be small, but you are mighty. Any other? Yes.
So they went all out on the color. Did they use an extra color? Because this just really pops for some reason.
I know, it's gorgeous. Yeah, I don't know how they did this. They embossed it a little bit.
Yeah, there's something that makes it three-dimensional.
Yeah, you probably know more about this from the book world than
I just don't know.
I just write them.
Well, I was just curious because I've never seen this kind of treatment. This is very unusual. or
Yeah.
children's picture book, you know. And
Yeah,
also,
they put a lot of effort, and if you undress it, the undies are pretty nice
I
too.
know, it's
So-
stunning.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous thing. And the art, you know, I wrote this in like 2 weeks. Well, the art took like 2 years. So Tiffany just did a wonderful. I would love to meet her sometime and just give her a great big hug because, you know, I could have just written the phone book and this would sell just for the art. I've been very lucky with the artists that I've been paired with, including Eleanor Briggs, who took all of the photos for Spell of the Tiger. So, anyway, gosh, I'm so grateful to you all for coming out in this. How was it driving? Who came from where? I mean, Hancock, I know. How was it?
Little bit sketchy.
Oh my gosh!
Worth it, worth it.
Wow! Well, and I know Heidi had police escort.
Yeah.
So,
So we had to get her here.
gosh, I'm so glad. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I'm happy to. Well, I'll need a pen though. Why didn't I bring a pen? I knew what I was doing here.
So is
Wait, I
this
do have a pen.
Size the start of her tour? Are you going to be traveling with them out for these 2 books?
For Secrets of the Octopus, they sent me to LA for the National Television Critics Night. That was a riot. They had a car come to my house and take me to Logan. They put me in first class. I couldn't believe it. It was just like, I see why people like it. So, and then they sent me to the Winter Institute, as you know. The Winter Institute is the American Booksellers Association gathering where they debut all of these new books, and you give out the galleys, the books that are. It's not the finished book, but it's some special ones they put out for the press. So they did that. I'm going to go to Mystic, Connecticut for a talk on Thursday with Heidi and with Warren, who's flying in from Austin, Texas. Let's see, I think April 3 I'll be out at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. But I think that's probably going to be it. I mean, and I'll be signing stuff at bookstores. But as you know, I just came off of 2 long book tours last spring and then last fall for turtles. And I have not learned the lesson that turtles need to teach me, which is to slow the heck down. But maybe 2025.
What's your next animal? What's your next thing?
Oh, well, actually, I have another book coming out in November. And that's on chickens. But the next research is going to be in Ecuador in giant manta rays. And giant manta rays, some of you may know, they're like these giant flattened sharks. They can weigh over a ton. And despite being huge, they can fly out of the water like a flying carpet. They can live for 70 years. They know people, and when they get into trouble, they'll sometimes, like if they have a hook caught in them, they'll approach a diver and ask the diver for help.